Some of the most baffling mysteries we know today revolve around people simply vanishing off the face of the earth. One minute they're there, speaking with friends and family. The next they're leaving a bar or their home, never to be seen again. But sometimes the strangest thing is when those people reappear decades later. Join us for today's episode as we examine 3 strange cases of people who disappeared and then reappeared. Vasile Gorgos. 63-year-old Vasile Gorgos was living in eastern Romania at the time of his disappearance. A cattle farmer and trader, Vasile was known to go on regular trips for his business. And on this particular day in 1991, he had already purchased his train ticket. Though he was away from home frequently, Vasile would always keep in touch with his family and arrived home when he said he would. But this time it was different. After leaving for a trip, he never returned. And although the police were contacted, virtually no leads or clues were found in the case. Vasile's family grew more and more concerned as time passed, with the days bleeding into weeks, months, and eventually years. They came to terms with the fact that they would likely never see him again, and accepted that if he had died, there was a chance it was not peaceful or accidental. The family held regular memorial services and grieved for him over the years. But in a shocking turn of events, they did see Vasile again. On August 29, 2021, 30 years after he went missing, a car pulled up in front of his home and outstepped 93-year-old Vasile, wearing the same clothes that he had disappeared in. He had nothing new, no new possessions or any luggage, and inside his pocket, his family found his train ticket, which he was due to travel with on the day of his disappearance, and his ID. He was in good condition, showing no signs of neglect or abuse. Notably, Vasile had not been in the driver's seat of the car, and the vehicle sped off before anyone could ask questions or see the driver. Unfortunately, relatives were unable to remember the license plate number. When asked where he'd been for the last 3 decades, the 93-year-old replied, "Home." While he was examined by a doctor following his return to his family, he was described as being in very good health, aside from some neurological issues, which were said to be nothing out of the ordinary for his age. His memories from before his disappearance were reportedly mostly very clear. His wife had died. He was born in 1928, and his parents were well-established and respected merchants. However, he struggled to recognize his 2 children, possibly due to how much time had passed. Despite being questioned about his whereabouts, Vasile could never recall what had happened to him in August 1991, when he'd left home for a routine business trip. Without proper answers, armchair detectives had been promising all sorts of theories on social media. Some speculated that he abandoned his old life to start anew, possibly with a lover, and that he returned home to make amends before his health deteriorated. Others have suggested that he spent 30 years in prison, but hadn't wanted to reveal this information to his family. This idea came about because Vasile was wearing the same clothing he had on the day he went missing. Another theory suggests that he had been kidnapped and forced to work in manual labor for the last 3 decades. Vasile's son initially didn't recognize his father. He told local media, "We don't understand him. He doesn't know what he's saying. He talks to us about the period when he was involved in raising and selling cows. We ask him one thing and he tells us another. Who knows where he has been? Who kept him? Maybe he was forced to work. Who knows what kind of life he led?" To this day, Vasile's whereabouts between 1991 and 2021 remain a mystery. Gabriel Nagy was last seen on January 21st, 1987 in Sydney, Australia. An accounting student taking night classes while working during the day, Gabriel was also a father of 2 young children, 9-year-old Jennifer and 11-year-old Stephen. On the day of his disappearance, he called his wife, Pam, to let her know he'd be home for lunch. Though Pam prepared him a meal, Gabriel never returned home. The following day, investigators reached out to the family after Gabriel's car was found on the side of the road. It had been burned out and abandoned, and Pam filed a missing persons report for her husband, terrified about his safety. Gabriel was a reliable man. He did what he said he would do and was always on time. If he was ever held up for anything, he would always call. The fact that he had neglected to come home the day before and that his car had been abandoned made Pam feel the worst. Over the next few weeks, searches were made for Gabriel and missing posters were distributed. When the police checked out the couple's finances, they discovered that the 46-year-old had withdrawn cash from an ATM in Newcastle, about 93 miles from Sydney. This was the only clue they found in the case. Pam could not account for why Gabriel was in Newcastle, and investigators were unable to uncover further leads. Gabriel Nagy was a missing person for 20 years. During that time, his children grew to adults and started families of their own. And while the family eventually moved house in the years following the disappearance, Pam always made sure they were registered in the phone book in case Gabriel ever wanted to reach out. But when 2 years became 5, 10, 20, they realized that things could be worse than they initially thought. Incredibly, just 2 weeks before Gabriel was due to be declared dead, the lead detective on his case decided to give it just one more look. And when she did, she discovered a Medicare record in Gabriel's name. Authorities soon turned up on Gabriel's doorstep. At the time, he sometimes called himself Ron Sanders. He was living in Mackay, nearly 1,000 miles away from where his car had been found abandoned. Gabriel did not recall anything about his past. He had been making his living doing odd jobs on fishing boats and construction sites, and explained that he'd been living as Ron Sanders for a long time, but had recently remembered his real name. He also recalled that he had been in Newcastle, where his car had been found, and had a bleeding head wound. He showed off a scar on the back of his head, which led him to believe he may have been suffering from memory loss. The last 20 years of his life had not always been easy. He had sometimes slept on the street or beach, and he used alcohol as a crutch at times. A local pastor had recently offered him work and a room, and it was he who helped Gabriel get a Medicare card when he needed surgery. Gabriel would later tell the Chronicle Mail that the detective asked me a lot of questions and started showing me photographs. It was like a cartoon where a flash of bulbs go off on the top of people's heads. She gave me a letter from Jennifer, a letter from Pam, and letters from my dad and stepmom. Later that day, Gabriel sat down and wrote responses to the letters. In the days following, his daughter sent him a text message. He recalled, it said, "Hi, Dad," and that was enough to make me cry. She wrote that she'd finished the letter and she still loved me. 10 minutes later, the phone rang and it was Pam. We talked until the battery died. It is generally believed that Gabriel develops the memory loss disorder named dissociative fugue after his car accident. Though they do not live together, Gabriel keeps in constant contact with his wife, children, and parents. Mary Day. Born in Little Falls, New York in 1968. Mary Louise Day was the oldest of 3 children born to Charles and Charlotte Day. By all accounts, Mary's childhood was a difficult one. Her mother was often unable to care for the children, resulting in the 3 sisters spending their youth in and out of foster homes. Eventually, their parents divorced and Charlotte married an Army soldier named William Hall. The couple had 2 children together, and Charlotte organized to take full custody of Mary and her sibling, Kathy. Their youngest sister, Sherry, remained in foster care and was ultimately adopted by her foster family. In 1978, shortly after the family relocated to Hawaii as part of William's job, Mary and Kathy's biological father, Charles, died in an accident, leaving the girls an inheritance, which they referred to by the code name Mohall. In 1980, at the age of 12, Mary was removed from Charlotte and William's custody when it was discovered that the latter had been physically abusing her. While the family moved to Seaside, California afterwards due to William's job, Mary remained in Hawaii. She was eventually sent to live with her mother and stepfather again. However, Mary was last seen on July 15, 1981, but she was never reported missing by her mother and stepfather. According to CBS, on the night that she was last seen alive, William physically attacked Mary after he accused her of poisoning his dog, which was sick. William and Charlotte would later claim that the 13-year-old was gone the following morning. Though her sister, Kathy, asked where she was, Charlotte told her simply that Mary had run away and to never ask about her again. In 1994, over a decade after Mary went missing, her youngest sister, Sherry, filed a missing persons report. She would later tell 48 Hours that she had asked her mother about Mary, and she told her the same story she had told Kathy, that Mary had simply run away. In some accounts, Charlotte reportedly said that Mary was also on drugs and had become a sex worker. She even stated that she had burned all photos of her eldest daughter. Kathy would later explain to her sibling, "We're not allowed to talk about Mary." After Sherry filed a missing persons report, little headway was made in Mary's case. An age-progressed photo of her was created and released. But it wasn't until 2002 that an official investigation into Mary's disappearance was opened. Police found that neighbors in Seaside did not remember the 13-year-old and didn't recognize her photo, and that while living in the town, Mary had not been enrolled at any school. Upon speaking with Kathy, investigators found even more information. She revealed that her sister had been beaten by their stepfather the night before her disappearance, causing her to bleed from her mouth. Notably, Kathy had been kicked out of the family home at the age of 14 and left to fend for herself. Sherry, meanwhile, reported to police that her mother had once told her that she knew of places in California where a body could be buried and never found. This led Sherry to believe that Mary had been murdered. Charlotte and William were inconsistent and untruthful when speaking with investigators. Charlotte appeared to know very little about her daughter's disappearance, other than that she ran away in 1981. She claimed that her husband had filed a missing report with the local police department, but no record of such a report existed. William claimed that he'd reported the girl missing to the police via a phone call. But again, there was no record of such a phone call. He later admitted to assaulting Mary the night before she vanished. Furthermore, in 1983, Charlotte reportedly lied to Sherry, claiming that she and William had gone to great lengths to locate Mary. They'd listed her missing, searched for her, and handed out flyers. But none of this was true. There was some speculation that the couple hadn't reported Mary missing because they were cashing her Social Security benefits at the time. In her interview with police, Charlotte reportedly stated, quote, "If Mary's dead, she's dead." Kathy also revealed to investigators that she and her siblings had been told not to go near a corner of the garden when they were playing outside. She directed authorities to the corner, and cadaver dogs reportedly picked up on the scent of human remains. A child shoe was found when police dug, though human remains were not located. Cadaver dogs would later alert law enforcement to an area near the house where the family had lived in Fort Ord, leading authorities to speculate that the body buried in the family home in Seaside had been dug up and moved with them when they changed homes. Everything changed in 2005, however, while investigators were building a case against William and Charlotte. In November of that year, a vehicle was pulled over as part of a routine traffic stop. The truck had stolen license plates, and police asked the passengers for documentation. One passenger had an Arizona state ID with the name Mary Day. It also had Mary's date of birth on it, as well as other important information. During an interview, the woman revealed that she was Mary Day, who had vanished in 1981 at the age of 13. She claimed that she'd run away from home to escape her abusive parents, but investigators were skeptical of her story because the woman had a thick Southern accent, which Mary did not have as a young teen. Adding to police doubts was the fact that the Arizona ID had been issued 3 weeks before she was taken into custody, around the same time that the homicide investigation had begun. Investigators decided to test the woman's DNA and compare it to Charlotte's, which showed that she was indeed her biological daughter. Although police still seemed to have their doubts, they could not argue with the DNA evidence. Mary's sister, Sherry, invited her to live with her in North Carolina. The two reunited with Kathy. Questions continued to plague the case, however. Sherry and investigators didn't understand why Mary had such a thick Southern accent, and Sherry noticed that her sister was receiving mail addressed to Monica Devereaux. Although it's possible this was simply an alias Mary used as it had the same initials as her real name. Kathy also had some suspicions about Mary because she didn't remember that their father had left them an inheritance or that they used the code word Mohawk to refer to it. She also didn't recall William's accusations that she'd poisoned his dog. The police expressed concern over the case, suggesting that Mary was a biological child of Charlotte's, whom she and William had posed as Mary Day to avoid prosecution. They claimed that Charlotte had several affairs during her marriages and may have had a secret child. But then in 2017, Mary revealed to a reporter that a woman named Marie Kimmel had taken her in shortly after she'd run away from home. Mary had lived with Marie for a year before running away again. Marie's relatives provided investigators with a photograph of Mary from 1982, proving that Charlotte and William did not kill her in 1981. Not only that, but Mary needed surgery in the months before she was found in 2005, which was the reason for her newly issued state ID, and that a local nonprofit had helped track down her birth certificate in order for her to obtain the ID. Following this, investigators closed the case, and Sherry accepted that the woman calling herself Mary Day was in fact her sister. Mary died shortly afterwards in 2017 at the age of 49. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and reactions. And remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.